You may have seen this viral clip on the internet of this weld here. It looks decent, but this weld is as fake as it gets. Let's look at the full clip here, shall we? Doesn't take a genius to see how fake this one is. Well, would you look at this? And wait for it. Okay, well, that's just plain lazy. But let's take a look at some of the comments on it here. People actually thought that even though this one was fake as heck, if it was actually a real weld, it looked pretty good. But here we go, my friends. Let's dig into this. Putting aside the fact that this weld is obviously fake, if it was actually real welding, is it really that good? Look at this right here. When I'm teaching on my channel or in my programs, you're gonna hear me refer to something as the welding profile. This refers to the overall shape of the weld, but more importantly, how the welding deposit blends into the base material. You wanna see a controlled profile, and we want to see this at the edge of the welding deposit, creating a smooth transition between filler material and base material. Specifically this area right here. Sometimes I refer to this as the blended edge. It's also referred to as the toe of the weld. But take a look at how this one transitions specifically right at the edge of the filler material into the base material. We want to see this transition happening nice and smooth. Looking at the profile of the welding from the side here, we can see adequate filler material being deposited, yet still keeping this transition nice and smooth. Let's take a look at our other example here. Looking at the transition that we just talked about, it does not look as smooth as we were just talking about, does it? This might indicate that even if this was a real weld, there is something deeply wrong with this. Take a look at the welding profile from this one from the side. We can see that excessive filler material naturally does build up in the center of a welding pass a little bit more. And when this happens, it prevents the edges from blending in adequately or smoothly to the base material. This is a term that's commonly known as cold lap, even incomplete fusion, among other terms you might hear thrown around. This is a place that can form a crack later down the line. This can even be a hot spot where corrosion can form, more specifically in some circumstances, but definitely later down the line. Let's turn on my welding machine here right now, and I'm gonna light up a weld and show you exactly what I'm talking about. Now the joint that we looked at in the video here, this is called a fillet weld. This is where two plates of material will join together to form a 90-degree angle. This can be done in a few different positions. You can see here, this is an example of a vertical fillet weld. It can be done in other configurations as well, but the video shows somebody doing it in a horizontal position. So that's what we're gonna set up to do here right now. Now, I'm assembling it out of some stainless steel plate material here, and we want to make sure that we can tack it together so the plates meet and form a tight seal between one another. We don't want any gaps in between the material, we don't want any uneven alignment, and when we finish putting it together, we want it roughly 90 degrees or square. Now, because my settings are going to change a little bit as I do this demonstration, I'll post the settings that I finally settle on at the end of this video. Hang tight. Now, let's get going here. Check this out. You can see I'm actually elevating the joint off the table a little bit here. This is something that I actually teach in my online TIG welding classes. We go over many little tricks like this to help beginners learn to TIG weld. Now, like this one here, because the angle of it is 90 degrees, and the natural angle that you're gonna be looking at it, however you're sitting or standing at your table, to be completely honest with this joint in particular, the visibility always sucks. However, if you elevate it off the table's surface, you can see your work much better, and your hands naturally will be more comfortable and you will have a better range of motion. And we can actually see in this video that the person has elevated their workpiece for better comfort, I guess you could say, on a bucket or something. Okay, we're all set up to weld, let's rip. Okay, here we go, lighting up. I am getting a good hot start here, very important. But you can see I'm also adding a little bit of extra filler at the beginning here. Adding a couple extra dabs of filler right at the beginning is going to prevent overheating at the start, despite me using a little bit of extra heat. Once my profile is filled up enough in relation to the heat that I am using, off I go. You can see that once I get going here, I decrease my heat a little bit. Now, each step that I take as I'm traveling along here, I'm making sure that I carefully watch the edges of the welding toes. I don't want any lack of fusion, which again can be caused by excessive filler material. Now, as I start to approach the end of the joint here, this is where I start to change my techniques a bit here. The joint at this point is going to be getting very hot. It is now way hotter than it was at the start of the weld, so I'm going to be adding a touch more filler to each step, as well as backing off my heat. When I finish my pass, I back off nice and controlled, and thoroughly post-flow the joint to prevent any oxide from forming, keeping my tungsten healthy and clean. and leave a nice little button on the end to keep it nice and organized and looking good. It's all about having a nice finish to the weld. Let's take a look at our other example here. Let's take a look, see what we got. All right, going back to the example that we were trying to outdo here, we can see that these edges that we have done here look way better. The filler is not collecting in the center like we see with the example that we looked at earlier. The filler material is blending in nice and super smooth on the toes right here. The transition is really perfect for exactly what we want with this one. Now, like we talked about, we have to be very careful with the amount of filler that we use. We already talked about what happens if we use excessive filler material. But the same can be said on the other side of the coin with insufficient amount of filler material. The profile of this can fall very concave and hollow. This can lead to a welding flaw called undercutting, and this is especially common with other welding positions like vertical welding. But take a look at this right here. I'm actually taking a look at the distance in between each step that we can see as I moved along the welding pass. This is a term that I teach in my program called stepping distance. If this distance is too far apart, we are going to see craters start to form in between each step that we take. Ideally, with each step, we want to make sure that we cover roughly 1/2 to 2/3 of the previous puddle we just did. And believe it or not, look at this here. Looking at our fake weld that we are looking at here, look at it. The stepping actually looks great. To the person who did this weld, my hat comes off to you, my friend. Well done with your stepping distance. Well done. He must have taken my online silicone welding classes on my website. Just kidding. Only real welding on my website, I promise. Oh, also, I have free classes on my website. Go register, take them right now for free, no charge. So now that we've seen me myth bust this fake weld on the internet, even though it was really done with silicone, I guess the only real question that remains is, can I weld silicone as well as this guy? Quick trip to the hardware store, grab a couple things, get some plate, get it set up in the same joint. Here we go, let's get set up. You can see that my joint is positioned exactly how we talked about. As I'm getting ready to weld here, I can see clearly and my hands have good movement. Brush off the nerves, get ready to do this one on camera, let's go. Okay, I'm off to a good start here. We can see good welding deposit here on the edges. My stepping distance is nice and consistent. As I am traveling along, I am just trying to keep up my comfort and consistency. Taking a close look at how my welding deposit is blending into the base material. And as I'm finishing, I'm keeping things nice and controlled, and there we go. Now, to add some finishing touches here, check this out. Oh my gosh, how does this look? Looks pretty decent. So, how did I do? Did my stuff stack up well to the example that we broke down earlier? Let me know how you think I did in the comments below. Again, make sure that you check out the free classes on my website. And yes, they are completely free, no catches. You can learn from home, you can learn at your own pace. These classes are an absolute blast. Have fun learning and happy welding.